Right? Those are common courtesies, in our country. Now, keep in mind, this is a Middle Eastern culture, around 2,000 years ago, so their culture is a little different. And keep in mind, too, that most of their shoes were open like flip-flops, and most of their transportation was horses and camels, and it was really dusty, the dirt roads. You can imagine, how their feet and their bodies and their clothing would get, how dirty they would get. And so it was customary whenever, a guest of honor would come in, that you would, wash their feet. I know that sounds weird to us, but that was like us shaking hands or hugging necks or something like that, and to kiss them on the cheek. Even men would kiss the other men on the cheek. That was their customs, and yet this guy didn't do that for Jesus. I just want you to know that so you'll kind of understand the significance of what is going on and what's not going on. How do we remove those negative, inaccurate, unfair labels? Even if we did screw up in the past, and yes, that label was true then, how do we shed that thing? Let's look at the word and see. Verse 37. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner, that she is sinful. You see him labeling that lady? And look, it was an accurate label at that point, okay? But look at Jesus' response. Verse 40, Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman. Remember, this lady is a sinful woman. She might have been a lady of the night. Who knows? She was full of sin the same way that I was. I mean, if you guys knew my background, I can relate to this lady here. Simon, you have judged correctly. Verse 44, then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You didn't put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her sins have been forgiven. Her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. Wow, man, Jesus removed that label off of her, but she's got a choice. Verse 49, the other guests began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? Jesus said, your faith has said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Let's talk about how to remove them negative, unfair, inaccurate labels that can define us and dictate who we are and who we become. I want you to please remember a very important fact, okay? Please remember this if you remember nothing else. Labels only have the power in your life that you allow them to have, that you give them. When that lady encountered Jesus, what did he do? He gave her a brand new label. Labels only have the power in your life that you allow them to happen. Don't give labels the power to define who you are and determine what you become. There are different ways we give labels power in our lives and allow them to dictate to us who we become and what we will attempt and what we think we can attempt. One of the ways is by wearing the labels around, allowing the labels to stick. If I come up to you and I say this or I say that, and it's wrong, if you allow it to stick, if I'm chasing you around trying to stick a label on you and you let me stick it on you, you are giving that label power over your life. We give those labels power whenever we wear them around. And the thing about it, like Brandon and I were talking the other day and she brought out, whenever we wear these labels around, guess what happens? People start seeing them. They start reading those labels, and it just perpetuates that cycle. We start believing because the other people start reading that label. We start living up the role. But see, it also, there's an opposite effect to that too. And we as parents or we as followers of Jesus, if we will put positive labels on people, they will want to live up to those things. But we give labels power by wearing them, by allowing them to stick in our lives. That lady, she had a choice. She could say, okay, I'm going to wear the label that Simon give me. I'm going to, yes, I'm a sinful woman. I will never amount to anything else. I've wasted my time here. I've wasted my resources. There's no sense in any of this. She could wear that label, or she could wear the label that Jesus just gave her, which was that she was forgiven. Don't let the label stick. You have a choice to wear it around, to allow it to stick or not. And what is so sad and unfair is that we have made mistakes in the past. I know some of my brother-in-law Craig, we call him Uncle Craig. Some of the things that he had done in the past, those are in the past. But the thing about it, after he started turning his life around and giving his life to Jesus and being cleansed of all of those things, guess what? There were people that still tried to label him and identify him based on his past. But those labels would only have the power that he would allow them to have. The same with you. What does your negative, inaccurate label say? Don't give it power by allowing it to stick and wear it around. Are you going to believe this, the Simons, the religious people, these religious punks that want to call you all of these, bad labels? Or are you going to believe what Jesus says about you? Another way we wear those labels is by believing the things that people say instead of what God says. Another way we give those labels power over our lives is by dragging the things from the past into our present and letting them define us and dictate where we're going and what we're going to become. So how do we remove the labels and not give them power over our lives? It's very simple. Let Jesus relabel you. That lady had a choice. Believe Simon and become that, or believe Jesus and step into her new role in life. Wow, man, Jesus is so amazing. It don't matter how dark or negative your label is, what you've done in the past, because the greater your sin, the greater the love you have for Jesus when you realize what he has done for you. How do you let Jesus relabel you? I mean, realistically, yeah, but how? How do I stop doing that? It's as easy as A, B, C. We'll put it together that way because I want you to remember it. You remember those three words. They each stand for something. You will learn how to remove the negative labels and how to prevent new ones from sticking to you and defining who you are. The first thing that you need to do, that this lady did and showed us, is that you have to accept what Jesus has already done for you. There's nothing else you have to do. Just accept what he has done for you. Like we said earlier, she had a choice. She could accept what Simon, that religious, labeler, was trying to put on her, or she could accept what Jesus had done for her. She didn't do anything except demonstrate faith and show love, and she accepted the new label. How do you do that? You accept what Jesus has done for you. You allow him to relabel you to be, accept ABC. A, accept what Jesus has already done for you. There's nothing you can do to add to that. He's already done all of the work. It is a free gift. All you have to do is accept it and receive it. You're saved by faith, not works, unless you be proud and boast. It is a free gift, and that's what's so awesome about the love of God. Have you accepted what He's done and allowed Him to relabel you? The next part is to believe what God says about you. She could believe what Simon says and allow that to define her and determine, her future and her destiny and everything else. Or she could believe what God said about her. You got to believe that you are who God says you are, not who somebody else says you are. And when you do that, you allow Jesus to relabel you, to take away those old labels and relabel you with something new. And then the C is you got to confess. You got to say it. Instead of saying, yes, I am sinful, Jesus relabels you and He says, Jesus says through Him we're forgiven. We are bought with a price. We are redeemed. There may be people that say that you're weak and defeated, but if you will believe what God says about you, this is how God labels you. God says in Romans chapter 8 that you can be more than a conqueror through Him. Some people may say that you don't have what it takes. You are unable, that you will never amount to anything. Are you going to believe that person? Or are you going to believe what Jesus says about you and confess that through Him you can do all things through Christ, because of Christ, because we are strong in the Lord in His mighty power? You may have struggled with addictions and felt worthless, but you can be free in Christ. And according to what He says, the ABCs of removing those labels, you are priceless. You are bought with a price. Jesus shed His blood for you and for me. What label are you